Hi there and welcome to this video with Wiskunde. In this video we're going to be looking at additional fractions, but we're doing a grade 6 version of it. So this means the denominators will be different. If you have some trouble doing that and you would like to find it a little bit easier, then please stay tuned. Now the very first thing you have to know is that when you're adding fractions, the denominator has to be the same. So when you look at the sum and the denominators are different, the very first thing you have to do is to get them to be the same. Now the only way you can do this is by making use of equivalent fractions. So this is where everything just comes together and you can use the previous knowledge that you've learned in order to solve simple questions. So our first type that we have is when the denominators are multiples of each other. So now when I look at my first example, you will see the first denominator is a 4 and the second denominator is a 12. Now I check, are they multiples of each other? How do I do this? I count in 4s and I check, is 12 one of the multiples of 4? So if we count, we will have 4, 8, 12, which means that 12 is a multiple of 4. So I can change this 4 to become a 12. And that means I have to multiply it by 3. And of course, just like we learned with equivalent fractions, what do? We multiply by 3 on top and at the bottom to then help you get the equivalent fraction. Then you can add the other fraction. Now if you look at the sum, you will see now the denominators are the same. So now I can add them. Right. So the next step, once the denominators are the same, the second step is add the two fractions or subtract depending on what the sum asks you to do. Right. Now when you add or subtract, what you do is you add the numbers on top and the denominator stays the same. Good. So I will end up having 6 plus 3, which is 9 over 12. So your second step was add the fractions once the denominators are the same. Your final step is to simplify your answer. So now if I look at my answer, I have 9 divided by 12. Is there a number that can divide into both 9 and 12? So what I do now is I look at my highest common factor. What are all the numbers that can divide into 9? What can divide into 9? 1, 3, and 9. What can divide into 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So now looking at this, what is your highest common factor between those two? It will be 3. So I will then use 3 and divide it by 3, both top and bottom. So your final and your simplified answer is 3/4. So just to take you back also, right? So the 9/12 and the 3/4 are actually also equivalent fractions of each other. Why is that? Because I divided by 1. If you forgot about that, please go back and check out what are equivalent fractions. Now in the next example, we're going to do an example where the two denominators are not multiples of each other, and then what you have to do after that. Right, so we're doing the second example, and in this one, the denominators are not multiples of each other. So if I look at the denominator, it's a 5, and this denominator is a 6. And if I look at the multiples of 5, I will have 5, 10, 15. You don't hear 6 at all. And if you look at the multiples of 6, 12, 18, 5 is not there. Okay, so we are going to need a brand new denominator. And to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to write down all the multiples, or at least 10 multiples of 5 and 10 multiples of 6, and look for the lowest common multiple, and that will now become your new denominator. So between the list of the multiples of 5 and the multiples of 6, what do they have in common and what is the lowest one? So what I spot is, I see both of them have a 30. So this means 30 is my lowest common multiple, and this will be my new denominator. So for this step, what did we do? We saw the denominators are not the same. So my first step is to make them the same. I will now write down my equivalent fractions with the denominator of 30. So the 5 I have to multiply by what to make it a 30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I multiply by 6 on top and 6 at the bottom. And then what do I have to multiply 6 by to make it a 30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I multiply by 5 on top and 5 at the bottom. And now once I know what my 1 is, I can write down my new equivalent fractions. And remember, when you're adding fractions, you add the numbers on top and the denominator stays the same. Alright, there you go, and that is your final answer. So just to recap, the first thing you have to do is make sure the denominators are the same. If they are not, you need to make it the same by finding the equivalent fraction, which is what we did here. Once you have your equivalent fractions, you can now add it up. If you add them up, you get your answer. The next step would be to simplify. Now, if I look at 30 and 23, they do not have a highest common factor because 23 is a prime number. So that will be my final answer. Okay, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of addition of fractions. In the next one, we're going to be looking at some more examples, but we're going to be using mixed fractions, and I'm going to look at some calculations with that. If you'd like to know how to do that, then stay tuned.